Tuning in to the online broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey guys! We'll let this roll for a sec here. Guys, it's a very, very special night here at AfterBuzz TV at the Royals After Show. We are joined by the one and only Mark Schwahn!
Oh, that's for me.
Yes! And this song, Mark's request.
That's right.
Awesome. Great request. We love it. Well, we're so happy to have you here, Mark.
It just means I'm old. And I remember the Clash. I'm like, how about the Clash? You're like, are they a band?
No, I know the Clash.
I'm thrilled to be here. There's no place else I would rather be on a foggy, Londony foggy Tuesday.
It is a Londony foggy Tuesday.
It is.
Well, we're so happy you're here after 2 seasons. We got you in here. We're so excited. I think the fans are probably dying. Watching on YouTube. Hey, everybody.
I will try not to let everyone down.
Do you have any social media, Mark? No?
I have zero social media.
He is unreachable, guys.
So you can't tweet him.
And I hear about it through friends, and people are tweeting me, telling me to tell you to get Twitter.
Aw.
So.
I know the fans are crazy on Twitter for the show.
You have a hashtag on Twitter.
Yeah, you do.
And I do, I'll answer questions through the E! Online Twitter.
Right, the Ask Mark,
Which
right?
is kind of nice because there's parameters to it. You know,
Okay.
I'll be here for an hour, I'll answer the questions I can answer, and then I get to go and do whatever the hell I'm going to do. And it's not like, hey, can you say hello to Brazil?
Right.
Which is nice. I will say hello to Brazil, but I don't have to say hello to Brazil Wednesday night at 11:30.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, ladies, let's introduce ourselves really quick for the final time for season 2. Hi, I'm Megan Stecher, and you guys can tweet me at Megan Stecher.
Fern Ronay here, and you can tweet me at Fern Ronay.
Traci Propst, and you can tweet me at Traci ABTV.
Mark Schwahn, and you cannot tweet me.
Yes! Mark, I don't even know where to start with this
my God.
episode. As everyone can see, I'll hold it up for the camera. This is completely full of notes in the back.
We do watch the show.
I know we do watch the show. We've had a few commenters on YouTube say that we don't even watch the show, which is...
Is that what they say?
Oh, yeah.
There's...
That's mean.
I know.
That's another reason I don't have any social media. Just people are mean online.
They are.
They can be.
Always be meaner online than in person.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, obviously, but people will say that just ruthless things, and then when you meet them, they'll always say, "Well, I wasn't very happy with that." Like they'll say it nicer,
Right.
Yeah.
but if it's online and they have anonymity, they'll just be brutal.
Yeah.
The keyboard gives people courage.
Oh,
It
yeah.
does. And I can't handle that heat, so I just stay out of the
Stay
kitchen.
away.
There we go.
That's right.
A couple things stuck out to me in this episode as far as throwing in Hamlet references a little more than usual. So always with the title, of course.
Yeah.
But this week I caught a murder most foul across the video that Mr. Stewart
That's
had
right.
spliced together to try to expose the royal family.
That's right.
But of course it didn't play, and we saw the king's murder right after instead.
Thankfully.
Thankfully. And then on the top of King Simon's tomb, do you call it a tomb? The quote, "The time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that I was ever born to set it right."
You know what's interesting about that is we were scouting locations, and we were scouting that cathedral as a location to put King Simon's tomb. And they were selling books in the church. You could just leave some money and take a book. And I found this really old little pocket version of Hamlet in the church. And I opened it up. I was with our first AD, David Crabtree, and I opened it up and I just pointed. And that was the quote that I pointed to.
Wow.
And I read it to him and I said, we're putting that on King Simon's tomb. And it was such a perfect verse for him. And so I found that book in that cathedral and I bought it. And that's how I found that quote for the...
Wow.
Perfect. Meant
It's
to be.
sometimes
kind of have
it's better
chills.
planned, but that time it was very random. So, but it worked out great, and that's
perfect.
you look, Hamlet. We were sort of loosely chasing ghosts of Hamlet, and there's such great material there, and we'll have great titles for years and years, I hope, because we're all telling the same stories. We're telling them in different ways. We contemporize them, but it's all these stories about revenge and lust and greed, and all of this it's the same stuff. Unrequited love, and so it's nice. It's nice to be in London. It's nice to have all that architecture and that history. And once in a while, you're in a cathedral and at a book sale, and you get lucky.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I have chills.
That's a nice little tidbit.
Meant to be.
Okay, so I feel like let's do this episode different than all the rest. Normally we kind of try to hash through what happened with everybody and their characters and everything, but since we have you here and we can get all the answers, we've got to take advantage. I think Fern and I have been dying to know, is Price stabbing the king cut and dry? We feel like it's the least cut and dry thing. We're like, there's something going on here. It's not right. There's a lot of clues that this is not just him stabbing the king.
I was amused listening to you guys talk about episode 9.
Okay.
Because you're like, what are we going to find out about Ted? It can't be that easy. But what I love about the show is you can get used to the fact that it's never that easy. So then we can make it that easy and you won't expect it.
That's true.
You sort of hide things in broad daylight. And yes, it was Ted. Ted killed the king. Yes.
Wait, you guys didn't think
We were convinced that there's something going on.
However,
Okay.
that doesn't mean that there aren't things you don't know yet.
Okay.
But the reason it's always been Ted in my mind from day one.
Oh my god,
really?
Yeah.
That was my next question.
And the reason that it was Ted, I will say this. I came into the writer's room because I have writers who help me, and they're very good. It's a very small writer's room, but some of them were with me at One Tree Hill, and some are new faces. But they're very dedicated, and they work really hard, and they love the show. And it's I think the most fun I have is when I'm in the writer's room with the writers, and it gets absurd and really filthy, and then we find a story eventually. But
Sounds like fun.
but it's not for the weak of spirit. But I went in and I said to them, you know what? I think it's Ted. And they said, why? Why would it be Ted? This is very early on. And I said, because of all the people, everyone else has sort of material gain in mind. Everyone else is trying to get something, like it's a cash grab or a power grab, or everybody's trying to, they're greedy or they're, jealous or whatever. So, but Ted has loss. He has this sort of basic thing where he loved his wife and he lost her. And he feels like ultimately, the Queen said, stop pouting and stop mourning the loss of this woman. Enough. Move on. And I think that I'm compelled by a good man who turns bad and makes a lot of mistakes and then can't take them back. You've got the feeling that he was incredibly remorseful of the choices he made, but he knew that there was no way out. Eventually, there was no right answer for Ted. And that's compelling to me. So I just love that he had very human reasons to make all those mistakes, as opposed to having it be Cyrus who just wanted to be king, or having it be the Queen for, whatever reason. Ted just had, he lost his wife. He felt like her memory was tarnished, that they didn't respect the commitment and the service that he had given, that he had sent his daughter away and not been around her as she grew up. And as Ophelia said, she always thought there would be someday and they would be a family. And I think Ted carried around this feeling that he had sort of put the king and his career ahead of his family. And, got to see, as he says to Liam in the finale, I called it, retribution, but it was really just revenge. It was really just him trying to make that pain go away, and he just made it worse. So there's other things. There's obviously other, you'll find out other things as we go. But yeah, it was Ted.
So did he have Robert call for Robert's killing?
Well, there's more. Obviously, there's more to learn about that.
Okay.
And but Liam says in the finale, Dominique said that it was Ted.
Right.
Obviously, there was, the calls came from inside the palace, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, Ted was a big part of all that, and then there's more as we move forward.
Fern was wondering about whenever Robert's killer, who I guess is not really his killer anymore, would say, "Oh, the calls came from inside the palace." You were saying, how was he so sure they were from the palace?
Right. Well, he had a major who has since gone missing.
Okay.
If you remember in episode 9 with James Hill and Jasper and Boone all in the alley with the guns drawn.
Yeah.
Then they go to the diner and they sit down and Boone says, "Look, my major is missing, and I'm trying really hard not to be the next dead man walking. So I'm trying to figure this out before somebody gets to me." So obviously his major had to come to him and say, "I need you to do this. Do you want to do it? Here's the money." It wasn't, Ted didn't do that. Ted didn't go to Boone and say, "Here's some money, kill somebody." It came through the military. So, and I think, when you see these crimes, there's always, the masterminds are always never directly responsible. I don't think the Grand Duchess poisoned the horse. I think she had somebody poison the horse. Right. So there's always a few steps in between, and I think the major, Boone was probably close enough to know that those calls were coming to the major from the palace.
Okay.
But he never heard the voice. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't know that part. But he knew that that's where the directive had come from. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Will we ever get to question the major?
Well, that's a good question,
Okay.
and but your instincts are good.
Okay.
Oh,
There are some pieces that there's some blanks that are yet to
This
be
is
filled
such
in.
a puzzle.
She had really good predictions this year.
I did.
Like the next week you would be right, and I would
And
say,
then I
last
forgot
week
them."
you said, I know, and you can't even remember them.
Well done.
Since Robert is alive, and you said, I think on The Royal Hangover, that you feel like the show is always going to be centered around Liam and Eleanor. Where does that leave everyone in their rightful place to the throne if Robert does reappear at the palace next season?
Again, that's a great question, because if Robert comes back, I mean, he's, first of all, that was a flashback. I saw some fans say he's been on the island lying there for 2 years or whatever. But he also was a little boy at the beginning of the episode.
Right.
He wasn't 5 in the beginning of the episode and then on the island. But first of all, will Robert get back to the palace? We have to sort of get him back to civilization somehow. But if he gets back, then he, of course, would be the rightful heir to the throne. Now, there are a lot of questions that are unanswered yet. We have to establish paternity. Were the kids, are they actually Simon's kids? And we don't know anything about Robert. We know of Robert, and we know the people's perspective of Robert, but we may meet a very different Robert, especially considering what has happened. Or we may meet Robert and get to know him and love him and want him to be the next king. Liam may realize that this is not meant to be for him as much as he tries. So there's a lot of story left to tell, and I'm really compelled about, I love characters that we know about, but we've not spent any time with them. And, if Robert can find his way into the mix, he's certainly one of those characters where his legend precedes him, but who's the real person?
So Robert's father has always been Simon, so we know that. But Liam obviously still up in the air.
Or do we?
Oh, okay. Well, on the Royals, anything goes.
You can't assume anything.
Okay, we'll set Robert aside. How about that? We'll just set Robert aside. And we know that the Queen wants to establish paternity for Liam. Why do she and Rachel look so shocked when they open up the tomb?
Because Violet is in the tomb.
What?
Violet
I
is
wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
No,
seriously.
Violet is
Makes
not
sense. Makes sense.
Wouldn't you be bummed if I just told you the spoiler? I don't know.
I
Some
would.
fans would say, no, tell us the spoiler. No, it's very interesting. I've heard from a lot of people, and it's kind of split. Half the people say she was clearly shocked, and so I don't think he's in there. That's what half the people have said. And the other half said, well, no, it just looked like she was like peering in, like, ooh, let's, we've finally gotten close enough to get our evidence. So I love that it's split. I obviously love a cliffhanger where there's debate. And some people say, I used to say this to the writers. I was like, look, if we are split in the writers' room, that's probably a good thing. Because if we're all absolutely, one way or the other, it's probably going to make for boring television. Yeah. But we would have writers say, I don't like him if he makes this choice. Or I don't like him. And I would say, well, that's a scene. Like, that good. Give a character that point of view. And what becomes of that? Like, if, let's say, you had a problem with the fact that Eleanor was going to push the button on the phone and probably send Ted to his death.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So she jumped right in on that. She's like, and that's another thing. Well, somebody said, I'm just not sure. And then that turns into the scene with Jasper where she says, if we're successful tomorrow, I'm officially part of the family business. And I want him to pay, but I'm not sure. I want to kill him. And I want to be the one. And then we get to the room and she says, I can do it. I'll do it. And Jasper moves her hand away. And Jasper takes that fall for her and carries that weight and says, I'll carry this around with me. I don't want you to carry this weight because I know that your heart is conflicted. And it's a very noble, romantic gesture, I think. I don't know if it's romantic, but it's certainly noble. But that's a scene that comes from dialogue in a writer's room where somebody says, I kind of have a problem with that. And then we talk about it, and I was like, well, if there's ever any sort of negotiation in our writer's room, I always say, give that negotiation to the characters. Like, find a great scene, let somebody, and if I disagree with that point of view, then probably the scene will end one way or the other, but at least we'll get some sort of interesting back and forth. So.
Tracy's very over this scene with Jasper and Eleanor.
I mean, you were conflicted, obviously.
Yes, obviously. So, I don't know. It was, okay, so can we talk, so is Ted, this is what I really want to know. What's up with Ted?
At the end.
Yeah, so does he actually, everyone would assume with thousands of people, like, he's obviously murdered.
Well, it's
stomped to death.
It's interesting because the actor who plays Ted, the good news is the actors want to stay on the show.
Right.
They don't want to die.
Right.
And I was talking to Oliver, who's a great guy who plays Ted, and he told me his theory about why Ted's alive. He's got a whole thing worked out about how, in advance...
Oh, he's trying to save his job.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Ted's alive because...
He's figured it all out, and he just went in great detail, and I nodded and smiled, and I said, you're so dead.
Oh,
really?
But that was just me being snarky and ornery. Obviously, we'll wait and see, but... You gotta figure that's a tough one to get out of.
Yeah, and maybe he comes back as a ghost.
Not everything. I don't want this to come out weird, but I don't think everything should be a cliffhanger. I think you reward fans with some resolution, and you give them some closure, and then you open up new doors, and you start down another path. And I think that the best serialized television is about creating organic obstacles. And then sometimes rewarding fans for their viewership and their investment in your show and giving them closure sometimes and not making everything a riddle. Because at a certain point, then you're dealing with evil twins and you're dealing with, the Martians and you're like clutching at straws because you need everything to be not what it appeared to be. And that's why I said to you guys, I was like, part of what this show does well is surprise you. And just when you assume something, you assumed incorrectly. And I love that, but I also like to balance it by saying, look, it was Ted.
Yeah.
We've gone 2 seasons with this mystery, and let's close that door, but there are other things you didn't know, and those things are going to come up next. And, it's always going to be evolving. You can't just create obstacles just to create obstacles because you frustrate your audience.
Right, I was going to ask you.
And you start feeling like a sucker. You're like, I invested all my energy in that, and they just lied to me for 2 seasons or whatever it is. So I just feel like that you have to find that balance. And it's a long-winded way of me saying we do listen and we do care about our audience and we want to surprise them. I love a show that has a big surprise. It would have broken my heart if it got out that Robert was alive.
Right.
You know, it's like I love a show that can end, take you to that beach and go, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that. By the same token, I also want the fans to have some rewards and some closure along the way and say, but trust us, we're going to open up a bunch of new doors and there's going to be all kinds of surprises behind those doors.
Because episode 7 was so satisfying. We got so
were
many
like,
answers.
that was the best
We
episode
were like,
of my life.
thank you for episode 7.
Yeah.
Because you got answers.
Oh
Yes,
my god,
yes,
it was so satisfying.
finally.
I was gonna say, did you feel like you were like, we have to give them something now? We've been teasing them too long.
You know what's interesting about that episode? Scarlett Lacey wrote that episode. She's new to television. She's not new to television. She was an executive and she wrote some TV movies, but she's new to serialized television. And she wrote episode 7 last year, which was the episode where the king was stabbed at the end of the episode and came to the gates. And so I feel like the seasons finish very strong. I think both seasons, because we do the work up front, you might argue that the upfront episodes can be a little slow, but I think they're slow because they're going to finish like a freight train at the end of the season. And so you have to put the work in and you have to put all that detail and texture in. I think that's fine. I think that's a satisfying way to make a show. She wrote episode 7, and we talked a great deal about what that episode could be. And it really started with I wanted the Queen and Alex's character, Eleanor. I wanted the Queen and Eleanor to have a day together. And we've seen them fight so much, and we've seen them be at odds so much. And it occurred to me that they both had broken hearts. You know, she had been duped by Mandy and Jasper in the episode before, and the Queen, Alistair, was alive but had said goodbye. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so we had these two women, both with domineering mothers, you know, and they were in the same place emotionally. And I said, you know, it would be nice if they could spend time together, but it can't just be that because we've just introduced Dominique, and we know there's this girl out there with the key to the, you know, the medallion. And so we started sort of putting it together that way, and it became a very satisfying episode of let's fill in a bunch of blanks so that we can set up the last 4 episodes and really deal with Ted and paternity. And, you know, there were so many things that we had to deal with. I just felt like 7 was the right place to answer some questions. I'm glad you guys liked it. James Lafferty directed that episode. He did such a great job.
We were blown away. I remember the week before you actually she said, I think Domino is a person. And I think it's something to do with a rival family. And the next week when those two things are right, I was like, oh my God, Fern, you're psychic now. Fern's like, did I say that?
Oh my god, totally.
She's like, I don't remember saying that.
I always love it when fans have really good instincts, and then I'm always a little bummed that we didn't trick them better.
But no, I mean, it was such a huge payoff. And for weeks, for the rest of the season, it has been. But 7 was so different to us. I think we're used to the pattern of how the show's normally is. And then to have so many flashbacks and long moments between the characters we were just blown away by 7.
And then 8 never leaves the palace.
Right.
You know, 8 is...
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's
Yeah.
I don't think I
Yeah.
noticed
You're right,
that.
it does.
7's rarely in the palace.
Right.
Yeah.
And then 8, we never leave the palace, and it's sort of locked down, and it's just our core cast. And I actually directed that episode, and we shot it in 6 days, where normally we'll shoot an episode in 7 days or 8 days. And I had Dame Joan in that episode, and she had a ton of work to do. And she was a trooper, man. She just showed up. We were a little worried because she had like 9.5 pages to do. Wow. Normally we'll shoot 6 pages in a day. So that's a day and a half's worth of shooting, and we have to sort of do it all in one day. And she had to hit Jake, who plays Cyrus, over the head with the vase.
I love that.
And the first time she said to me, oh, I don't think, you know, I said, because we can double you, we'll get somebody, you know, we'll have somebody else to do it. She said, no, I don't think that I want to do it. And I said, well, do you want it? Like the vase was really light. You know, it's obviously a double and it's made out of wax or something. And I said, well, just feel, you know, hold it and stuff. I said, why don't you try one in rehearsal? So she did it in rehearsal, and I think she loved it so much. She probably hit him over the head about a dozen times.
Wow.
And Jake's just hanging in there, and Elizabeth's looking up, the pieces are hitting her, and just kept cracking him over the head, take after
Back to
take.
her Dynasty days.
Yeah,
She's
Yes.
fighting with Linda Evans.
She's very game. She would say to me, I think I should have a fight.
I love it.
It's so her. It's so
I
in
love
her.
it.
But she did say to me, but I think you'll have to double me.
Oh,
I said, yes, I think we will.
I want to fight, but I can't be in the
I
fight.
think we will.
Double.
I don't think we're gonna have Dame Joan getting thrown over couches.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite line from that episode was "Deal with your homicidal mother." Like when Liam says that to Helena.
I did the AfterBuzz or the Royal Hangover show, and I mentioned my mother because she had texted me about the episode, and so I said, "Oh, my mom's texting me," and I read a couple of the texts, and then my mom said to me, "I don't think people liked that because somebody said something about me on one of those tweets on the bottom," and I said, "I don't think so, Mom." So I went back and I watched the episode. And I had her on the phone, and it was that line, and she thought that they were saying that about her. She thought somebody had tweeted it, "Deal with your homicidal mother."
Oh my God.
Your poor mom.
I know, and I said, "Listen, Mom." I said, "I don't think anyone's calling you homicidal, not that I know of."
Oh my
But
God.
she and she goes, "Oh, well, that makes me feel better."
She definitely shouldn't have a Twitter.
Yes, exactly.
That's so cute.
Let's play a quick 3-question rapid fire of burning questions from the fans. Eleanor and Jasper holding hands as the crowd attacks Price. Was that an ode to Fight Club's final scene?
That's a great question. I may have subconsciously stolen that. I didn't mean to.
I just thought it was a great ode to that scene. Like it was the same.
That's really interesting. Obviously, I've seen Fight Club, and it's amazing. Sometimes I think you lift things you don't even know you're doing it, but something influences you. So it may have. It wasn't intentional. I love that reference though. For me, it was. I pitched this to this. It's pretty amazing how we pretty much make the show we pitch. I'll work with the writers for 2 months, and then I go in and pitch the studio and network, and literally, essentially talk them through all the episodes in advance of shooting them. And I pitched all of these moments. Like after a whole season, sometimes what you find out is what you intended to be episode 10 becomes episode 5 because you've run out of good stuff or you accelerated something, and then you're sort of rewriting the end of your series on the fly, or the end of your season. But I pitched that very, Jasper takes her hand as the crowd closes in on Ted. I pitched all of that, and I think the network felt like it was a little small, was their reaction to me. They were like, well, we were expecting something more for them as a couple, and I was teasing them because I was like, you want them to start making out? Like, what do you want? Like, they're, what I loved about it was that we started them, first episode, they're nefarious towards each other, they're deceptive, may have been some rape involved. We find out later that Jasper was like, I made it up, but it starts off from, I drugged you, I raped you, I blackmailed you. That's where they start. Yeah. And it's so dark and sexual, and I loved that at the end of 20 episodes that she takes his hand, and we can rebuild them in a way, potentially, but it's such a chaste, romantic, sweet moment. Obviously it's tragic because of what they're watching, but for that couple to end up there after 20 episodes and all they've been through, I really loved it. And I thought I was a little brokenhearted that they didn't love it as much as I did. And sometimes that happens, you pitch your network and studio, and it's just sort of, it breaks your heart a little bit because you're like, I thought they were gonna love that, and when they don't, it kind of kills you. But the good news is they're great to work with. They really are, and I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. And they were like, but if you love it, then do that.
I was gonna say they still let you do it,
because a lot of times for a young show, they're like, we don't like that, so let's talk about how we're going to change it. And that happens a lot. But I got to tell you, I've been really happy with E. They've been really good about saying, hey, man, this is your show. Just make your show.
Well, I thought it was
I think it was
brilliant
perfect,
scene.
yeah.
I had chills. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
just
I loved
the way
it
you
too.
shot it from behind and that whole thing.
Yeah, I loved it too. And that was the last official, well, it was the official last day of the season when we shot that. And it felt really nice. It felt like that's where we should be ending.
It was awesome. Second burning question from the fans. The locket that's given to Cyrus when Violet's personal effects were found in the car, were they both pictures of her in the locket, or were they her and someone else?
Those are both pictures of Violet.
Okay.
And they're both pictures of Keeley, who played Violet.
How cute. So they're her real.
So yeah,
okay.
I just said to her, you gotta find me some like baby pictures and little girl pictures, and she sent us a batch of them, and then we had them fit into the locket,
Cute.
which was really hard to shoot. I shot that episode, and like the locket's this big, and I'm like, Jake, can you turn it like you can't see the picture? It's like it's so ridiculous how minute you get, and you're like, what are we doing with our lives? It's like no, the light's hitting it too much. Turn it back the other way.
Well, it being the Royals, Fern was predicting like, oh, I think the other girl in the Locket's Penelope. They know each other.
What I love about you guys is that I get story from you because you're like, maybe it wasn't them in the Locket, and I'm like, maybe it was.
Yes! She was carrying around a locket with 2 pictures of herself.
Well, her
She was bringing
grandmother
it to
gave
him.
it to her.
Oh,
If you
her grandmother.
remember,
Yeah.
she was
Okay.
Rudolph at the Happy Christmas Fair.
Yes.
Do you remember this?
Yes.
Okay.
And she said her grandmother gave her a locket that made
go
everything
get
better,
it.
and she was going to go get it. So I thought the grandmother probably had carried pictures of her
Okay.
and just gave her the locket because it said the little inscription on the back.
Right.
And to like make her feel better. And so that's what got transferred over.
Okay.
Well, third burning question is about jewelry again. It's about the diamond earrings. So we saw Eleanor give Helena the diamond earrings and said, oh, your mother was wrong about you. But then we see Mr. Hill. Were those the same earrings he gave to Jasper to give back
Now
to
you guys,
Eleanor?
now you guys are the network.
Well, we got very
Because
confused.
the network said the same thing
yeah,
to me.
we
They
got
were
very
like,
confused.
how did these earrings get to James Hill? And this is like, okay, here's minutia. Like here's sort of off-camera minutia. So she left them behind, if you remember.
Okay.
Right? The queen left
Yes.
them. She set them down because, as I read, somebody posted in response to this whole
one of our
conversation.
number one fans.
Yeah,
she's-
posted like, I think that she left him behind because she didn't want the Grand Duchess's things. The Grand Duchess sort of held everyone captive a little bit, emotionally at least. And Eleanor says to her mother, she was wrong about you. She's always telling her, diamonds don't look good on you, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, she was wrong. Take these. I don't want them anymore. Because Eleanor says to Liam in episode 8, she swindled me with diamonds and kind words and all of those things. Anyway, the queen left them behind. Now, the part you don't see is we know they're Eleanor's. We know the Grand Duchess gave them to Eleanor. So in my mind, they were given back to her security detail, which is James Hill, because he is her ward. Right? Here, the diamonds have been left on the banister. They're Princess Eleanor's. Give them to her security detail. They'll get back to her. So that's the piece that we didn't connect because I had so much story to tell that I was like, do we really need to know? Anyway, apparently we did need to know. So that, again, it's sort of minutia, but in my mind the logic was the diamonds, when located, because the queen left them there, will be given back to Princess Eleanor's security detail because they are in fact hers. And then he instead gave them to Jasper and said, here, I'm going to hook you up. You'll have an in. This will give you a reason to talk to her. Take her back the earrings, and you'll have an in. So.
I'm going to be really sad if he turns out to be a bad guy
Oh
next
my
season.
God, we love him.
We're obsessed
And we
with
think
him.
he's so handsome.
He's too pure, Fern. They're going to ruin him.
You like
Leave him
Jasper.
alone.
You like
No,
Jasper.
James.
Oh,
No,
James.
James.
Oh, I
we
thought
are
you were talking
James.
about I'm like,
James Hill,
Oh,
he's
sorry.
so handsome.
That's
I'm like Josh.
You know what's
He's
great?
handsome, too.
What's great about that again is somebody said this to me about Violet. They said, I just felt like she was, we're gonna find out what her true story was and how she was planted and blah blah blah. And I said, well, what's interesting about a show like this is because, and you guys pointed out earlier about Ted, when no one is who they seem, and when everyone has a secret past or something that crops up that you didn't see coming, then you can have a few characters who are what they seem, and that's the surprise.
Yeah.
The
Right.
surprise is that they were telling the
really
truth.
are,
yeah.
And James Hill was created because Eleanor lost her father, and she lost her brother in the same year, and they were two people who could be counsel to her and help her through her loud shit show life. And I just wanted somebody to come in that was close to her, that wasn't trying to sleep with her, and that could be a bit of counsel, maybe not incredibly sweet, or incredibly emotional, although I think James Hill has been very sweet to her, but somebody that was consistently knowable and trustworthy. And I like that James Hill is that person. And she was trying to guess his past, which turned out, it was a story about his daughter and how he came to the palace. But I like that she has someone that she can rely on. Now, that doesn't mean next season, ultimately, he can't just be that, because it's going to get boring. It's very funny. Historically, fans will always say to me, why can't you just let him be happy? And then when I let them be happy, they're like, it's boring.
Yeah.
So there's always a balance. But I think that James Hill's heart is in the right place. It doesn't mean that he won't get leveraged, or he won't, be put in a position that he's got to make a decision that she might not approve of, or what have you. There's always story to be found. But I think ultimately he's not a character who has this agenda that is malicious or dark or something that we don't know, if that makes you feel better.
Did you always? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, how about everyone get to ask the burning question they have?
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. This is my burning question. I couldn't help
Depends on
myself.
how burning. I've been in the fire all day.
So Jasper is played by Tom Austin. He's British. So when you were casting him, did you intend to cast a British actor who would be playing an American from Vegas? And is he really an American from Vegas?
Those are good questions. You have to pick one of them. No.
Yeah.
Those are all burning.
That.
No, I had always intended the storyline that Jasper was in the palace under false pretense and that he actually was an American.
Okay.
That was always planned. But so when we were casting, we were auditioning actors and asking them to do both accents. And I loved Tom. Now, in the pilot, if you remember, Jasper shows up very late as her replacement security detail, and then just has the one big scene at the end. He meets her in the wine cellar, and he's a bumbling idiot, conceivably. And then they go to the club in Paris, and then she wakes up and he says, ha ha ha, I'm not who you thought I was. Well, he was such a small part of the pilot. So when you're casting an actor, first you have to convince their agent that they have a much bigger role to play down the line because it's not on the page. Then you have to convince them it's not that big that it should cost so much money. Because that's the next place they go to. And then you have to convince the actor, there's really good stuff coming. So believe in this character and believe in the fact that it may be a small piece of this episode, but it's a big part of the world. When we met Tom, I just thought he embodied all of that stuff. He could do both accents really well. Although I read online, and I don't read a lot of stuff online, but I read online where someone said, he should just stop doing the British accent because he's not good at it.
Classic.
And then somebody wrote, he is British. And he said, oh, well, then, I don't know. Maybe it's just his voice. Yeah. But the Vegas story is true.
Okay.
Because we had the orphan story and
Right.
we had
There's
those,
so
and there
much
were reasons
backstory.
for all of those stories. But the Vegas story is legitimate. Also, it doesn't mean that he came straight from Vegas to the palace. It could be a stop off along the way, and there could be other story to be had. But I think we've roughed up Jasper a lot. What I love about Jasper, and I love this about Nathan Scott on One Tree Hill. I loved it about Dan, and I love it about the Queen, and maybe even potentially Cyrus. Villains are really watchable and really interesting, and once they're on your side, it's nice to have a villain on your side. It's great to have a bad boy on your side who can be a bad boy, but really good to you. That's... we in the writer's room we call that relationship porn. Because you got this guy who's seemingly this bad guy and carrying around all these secrets and the weight of the world, and he can throw a punch and drink a beer, and he's lived all this stuff, but he's very sweet to you.
Right.
And he's very protective, and you're safe because he can take care of you and he can take care of himself. And that's a great character. That character has worked for years and years, and it will work for years and years.
Yeah.
You have to pick your spots with how much the relationship can handle. How many times can Jasper continue to screw up to the point where you're just like, I think he's kind of toxic for her. You know, like there's a point where you go so far that it's like, this is seeming unhealthy for everybody involved.
You're not rooting for the relationship
right,
anymore.
Right. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we want to take Jasper's teeth away and take his, fierceness away and make him this sort of puppy. Right. Because I think Jasper's really good at being really bad. It's just maybe it will be in service of our family. Maybe it will help them get things that they're after. Maybe it will be against Cyrus or what other threat shows up. I don't like characters that are always right and always wrong. You see that with Eleanor too. She makes as many mistakes as any character on the show, but you get a sense that she's worth rooting for. And I think that's the same. I feel the same way about Jasper as well.
We love him.
Tracy,
okay.
questions?
I really want to talk about Ophelia and like the resurfacing of Ophelia, and assuming there is it going to be like kind of a vengeance thing? Is her and Liam's love story going to continue and pick up? Does she feel bad or is she mad? I just, as much as you can tell, will be appreciated.
Well, I respect that burning question. That one is really burning. Yeah. First of all, I love Merritt, and she was incredibly well liked. It was hard to not have her around. The cast and crew enjoy her very much, as do I. I'll tell you where that storyline sort of took a left turn for me was I didn't want it to be too easy. I didn't want it to be like, oh, there's this girl who's the daughter of the help, and they just fall in love and it's fine. Everything works out. And it just, I felt like I was writing a story that I had seen before and that it was very archaic. Now, the danger in that, and I trust me, I know there are a lot of fans of that relationship because they were asked to believe in that relationship. Like when you drop into a pilot, which is about these two characters meeting sort of Romeo and Juliet style, you've been asked to invest in that relationship. Now, you may not like that relationship. You may not like the characters or what they're doing or their chemistry or what have you. But some people will because we've asked them to. And I think what made the show a little different and what surprised the audience was my point of view that, let's be honest, if this guy was a playboy before we met him, and if he was dealing with all of these things, the loss of his father, the loss of his brother, the weight of the world on his shoulders where he's next in line to inherit the throne, so he probably wouldn't be an outstanding boyfriend in those moments. And she shouldn't put her life on hold and wait around for him to get his shit together. And so I thought that it was sort of a contemporary story that you don't see in television a lot, because in television we go, here's our stars, they'll be here.
Right.
You're going to get to know them. You'll be comfortable enough to know they'll always be here. Nothing's going to happen to them. And, you watch other shows on television and a star gets killed or what have you, and you're like, whoa, because you've been conditioned to not expect that. Like, you're not going to kill this. He's the star. So I felt like it was a story that had a little more legitimacy. The fact that maybe it's not going to work out. And maybe, he does look her in the eye and very sincerely say, I'll see you someday. And I like to believe in that someday. I think that he genuinely meant it when he said it. Whether or not they get back to it, I don't know. I'm not sure, because I think it's unfair to Ophelia to say, just wait. You just sit and wait and pine and wait for him to get it together, and then he'll come back and get you. It feels very archaic to me. It feels sort of anti-girl somehow. And I loved that she moved on to Nick, and that we didn't expect Nick to be there. And when he walked in, you're like, why not? This guy was really good to her, and he was handsome, and he wanted her, and why not? She could be incredibly happy for the rest of her life with Nick. We didn't set it up that way, but I kind of like that it felt very human to me. That's not to say that we won't go back to that. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that we will. It's kind of like life, where they may find their way back to each other at some point, or they may not. And that may be a frustrating answer, but I think
it is frustrating, Mark.
But I think it's
very frustrating.
But what I love is I think it somehow feels legitimate to me, as opposed to now we're gonna have her back, and now they're gonna work through their stuff, and she's gonna say, you left me hanging, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. it's so familiar. Sometimes it's familiar because it's the right thing to do, and it's what the audience wants.
Expects or wants,
You know?
yeah.
And trust me, I do see the love for Ophelia and Liam, and I knew that this was maybe potentially not going to be a popular decision. But ultimately, I think we got interesting story out of it, and you know, now, personally, if Ted is gone, and I think he is,
There you go, loyals.
I don't know if Ophelia ever wants to come back to that environment, or
She'd have a
maybe it's
reason
only
to.
right.
Yeah.
That, you know, like it could go any of a number of ways. I know that's a frustrating answer.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I won't sleep tonight, but thank you.
Wow, that was a good one. Let's see. When does season 3 start filming?
I feel bad that I've been talking so much.
No, we
No,
love
I
it.
mean that's why you're
That's
here.
why we're here.
We talk
And
all
it's
the
been so
time.
It's the last
juicy.
question. We have to wrap up, so we just want to know when all the fun starts all over.
Well, I talked all the way through this.
Good. I liked it.
Season 3 will start. The writers will start in like mid-March, and we'll do about 2 months worth of work in the writers' room, and then we'll pitch what we would like to do, and then I'll go to London in mid-May, and the show starts shooting in like early to mid-June,
All right.
and then we'll shoot through the summer. The actors show up in June. They leave in like September. I stay until almost Thanksgiving with post and editing, and it's a nice run for me because I get the best weather in London
Yeah.
from mid-May to right about the time it gets a little cold and rainy, and then I come back here and get the best weather in LA.
Perfect.
And,
Win-win.
It's a nice gig, and I've talked a lot, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that I appreciate not only you guys being inside the show and talking about the show, but the fans being inside the show. You know, it's nice. It's very rare. I had a show that had a very loyal, faithful audience that loved it, and it's a wonderful thing. And we have a similar environment here. It's not the same, of course, but it's we have a really good fan base of people who love the show, and I think that's it's very humbling and it's not taken for granted.
Aw, well, thank
Very
you for
nice.
joining
Yeah, we're
us.
humbled by you
so
being
much.
here, to be
Yes.
honest.
It's been
so.
fun.
All right, fans. Well, don't be too sad. Next year we've got Ted probably dead, as we heard from Mark, but we don't know where the king's bones are. We don't know what's going on with Jasper and Eleanor. Robert's alive. Cyrus's baby's on the lam. I don't know. We got a lot to look forward to, guys. Tracy,
So I
where
love it.
where can we find you on
You guys
social
can
media?
find me on Instagram at TRACIPRO or on Twitter at TRACIABTV.
Fern Ronay here. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fern Ronay.
And guys, you can find me, Megan Stecher, on Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. It's all at Megan Stecher. It's MEGANSTECHER. That's it for season 2 for the Royals After Show here at AfterBuzz TV. But we are looking forward to season 3 in the fall. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Yay! Thank you, Mark.
You can find me with
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
I could tell anecdotes, and it's like,
Yeah.
you didn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
You know, so you guys.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.